one of the top analysts in all the land, college football analyst of Fox Sports. And as I mentioned, Chris Brockman last week, before I introduce him, he and Gus Johnson are the tracks of my misery. Is that what I have said?
Yes, something like that.
The voice tracks of my misery with the Michigan Wolverines. He's none other than Joel Klatt. How are you, Joel?
I didn't know that this fun interview was going to trigger you in some way, but the voice tracks of your misery, I've never quite heard it.
I was in such a good mood, and now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I'm serious, man. I honestly am so scarred by some of these experiences of watching Michigan and of late. And you and Gus seem to be in the booth every time since Fox has only the best Big Ten games. So there's that.
It's not been good to you. I mean, I think. Listen, let's start with Michigan, if you don't mind. Last week was, to me, way worse than even last year. I know that the fans, the Ohio State game means more,
right?
But from my standpoint, just from an overall program, I thought last week was the bottom of the barrel, potentially, just because it felt so much different because they didn't have an identity. You know, at least against Ohio State last year, you could say, hey, one of our starting corners was hurt. They've got 3 guys that ran under 4.4 at the NFL Combine. They've got one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. Like, okay, we went there and we lost. You know, Winovich was a little banged up, so on and so forth. But last week against Wisconsin literally took their own identity, what Michigan has built itself under Harbaugh, and just smashed them with it. And to me, sitting up in the booth, I was like, man, this is a lower point than losing to Ohio State last year.
You know what? I'm retortless, Joel. I don't even I don't know how to say what you've just said was inaccurate in any way. And you didn't even mention the fact it was coming off a bye week, that was extra week's worth of preparation before that performance,
which is not good. And I tell you, there's no element to that team that you can say like, well, at least they've got this or that are playing well. They were bad in every single phase. And I think that the more troubling part, and the reason that I just don't see them getting out of this, is the offensive line was awful. You know, and so that's a troubling aspect of all of this is that their offensive line, which I thought was going to be one of the better offensive lines in the entire conference, isn't even close. And they were playing really, really poorly, and those quarterbacks had no chance in the pocket.
Well, thanks for coming on, Joel. Really appreciate your time. But no, I mean, you're in Oklahoma and you're going to see Jalen Hurts this week, and the reason why I bring that up just before we dive deeper into him and Oklahoma is Justin Fields goes from Georgia to Ohio State. We all know where Hurts came from before showing up in Oklahoma. Michigan goes and grabs Shea Patterson from Ole Miss, and that hasn't even come close to working out as well as the 2 previous instances. Is it the offensive line? What is it, just before we move on? Because that's the question I'm getting from so many of my fellow alums and friends. Is the quarterback the issue, that Harbaugh just doesn't have one and still hasn't, really?
Well, I think it's probably way too easy or maybe lazy to just blame it on the quarterback. I think Shea has played well at times, and he wasn't really a great fit for the pro style. And now this year, I don't think that the team and the philosophy and the identity is a great fit for Josh Gaddis and this offense. I think that they have a clear lack of understanding from a player base of how to run this offense efficiently. And the offensive line certainly has been, in this philosophical change, they're the ones that I think have been most hurt because they just don't play with the same energy, the same discipline, the same detail that they were able to play with in years prior. So in years prior, they had a system that had a real inability to beat teams that they were overmatched by or come back if they had a deficit. You know, so that was a system issue. They just had a hard time throwing the football in a drop back mode. That wasn't what the system was built for. So they go to this speed and space. They bring in Josh Gaddis. They change their philosophy. And yet what they have lost is the ability to control the game on the ground, to have the ability to throw play action pass. And so now they just don't have an identity from a play selection standpoint, from a toughness mentality. And they put the chips right into the middle of the table, and it was kind of boom or bust, and it's gone bust so far. So I think it's probably more holistic Rich, than it is just about the quarterback. Because even when Dylan McCaffrey went into the game, and he's a really talented player, you got all these quarterbacks that they're talented guys, but they were getting smashed on every single passing attempt. Wisconsin was putting pressure with 3 guys, 4 guys. The offensive line could not do anything to slow down that rush.
Well, it's interesting you use the word holistic because that's the type of drugs I've been using to get through some of these games lately, Joel. So we kind of match up right there. Joel Klatt here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, so you, Gus, and Jenny Taft are in the heartland, Texas Tech and Oklahoma. Jalen Hurts is just truly one of the most remarkable stories in all the land. He has been nothing short of dynamite. What young man have you found showing up there in Oklahoma fresh out of Alabama?
I think he's one of the most mature players that I've ever been around at this stage. And he has a unique understanding of his role, not only here at Oklahoma, but within college football. And in this day and age of kids that, quite frankly, are really immature because of the way that they're recruited and then the ability to transfer at any time, he's navigated this period as well as anybody, to the point where he's a fan favorite all over the country because of his team first mentality, kind of doing it the right way, graduates before he. Now he's here and he's having a lot of success. And I got to tell you, the biggest difference from me is when he was playing at Alabama, they were still running a system and having a philosophy that was, hey, quarterback, don't hurt us. Play safe. Don't turn the ball over. Manage the game, and we're going to win it with our running game and our defense. And that was kind of the philosophy when he was playing there. And then all of a sudden they changed that philosophy, and they've kind of gone towards Tua, and they went towards the wide-open offense last year, more specifically. They threw 52 touchdown passes as a program last year, which led the country. So they clearly had a philosophical change with some of their wide receivers and quarterback that they had. And I think he felt like he never got a chance to play in that offense and to really cut it loose. So one of the things Lincoln Riley has done with Jalen ever since he got here on campus is they've worked more on getting him out of the game management mode and into the playmaker mode. Go play carefree, cut it loose, get the ball down the field. When you want to take off, take off. You can be a playmaker for us and not just a game manager for us. Now, while a quarterback has to manage the game in and of playing the position, again, the freedom with which he plays is very different. Just to give you an idea here, in terms of yards per attempt, he leads the country, Rich, at over 14 yards per attempt. That's over 2 yards more than the number 2 player in the country, which is Joe Burrow at LSU, over 2 yards. At Bama, Jalen Hurts' yards per attempt was 7.9. So he's almost doubling what he was at Alabama, and I think it's more of a philosophy. It's more of a freedom with which he plays. And it's also the ability of his play caller, Lincoln Riley, to get beneficial matchups in space and allowing him to make those plays down the field. But it's not just his ability to throw, which I think is really good. He also, and I know this is heavy statistics here, but he also averages over 12 and a half yards every time he has the ball, whether it's a pass or a rush. That's the best in the country. 12 and a half yards every time he either throws it or runs it. He is a dynamo right now in college football. And if the vote took place today, he would be the Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue with that. Joel Klatt, Fox Sports, he's going to call that Oklahoma-Texas Tech game. I have a pen, I have a Sharpie here, or should I go get a pencil? And the reason why I ask that is, which would I use to put Oklahoma versus Alabama in the first national championship semifinal game this fall?
Oh, wouldn't it be amazing?
Well, I mean,
wouldn't it be amazing?
Tell me how that doesn't happen then.
Well, I think that the defense for Oklahoma can still be a concern, and Sam Ehlinger is throwing the ball as well as anybody out there. And so their ability to beat Texas, I think, is still a coin flip, and they're probably going to have to play them twice. So I don't know if you can just absolutely shoo in Oklahoma into the playoff. Ohio State looks really good right now. I actually think that there's more great teams this year than we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years. Came into the year thinking it was just going to be Clemson and Alabama, and then they would just play for the national championship. But now when I look around, LSU, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, all these teams look like they can play at the top echelon in college football, maybe even Texas. even after that loss to LSU. So I don't think you can just pencil or pin in Oklahoma, but I think everybody, Rich, would love to see Jalen Hurts play against Alabama in the college football playoff.
But in a semifinal, you know what I mean? Like, that's the 2 versus 3 seed situation. I could see that right now, plain as day, and it's not even October yet. Joel Klatt here on the Rich Eisen Show. So last year, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, interestingly enough, that was the one matchup where Cliff Kingsbury, coach of Texas Tech, lets it drop. Hey, if I had the first overall pick in the draft, I would take Oklahoma's Kyler Murray. And everyone, ha, ha, ha. And then guess what happened? And we all know what happened at the top of that draft, Joel. And then a couple picks later, Daniel Jones is selected by the New York Football Giants.
That's right. That's right.
Would you recall? Do you recall who my guest was on the Friday Rich Eisen show after that day in person in Nashville, who was so very strong in saying how that was the worst pick maybe the Giants have ever had? And I think you said that they would set the franchise back, is what I think I heard. Was that you?
Was that me? Was that me? Okay, so you can't see it, but I'm raising my hand right now in my hotel room. So that was me.
Okay, that was most people. Joel.
All right, let me explain.
Go for it.
He can work out and be a really good player. And while what I said about setting the franchise back might not be true, it can still be the wrong selection. I'm not trying to die on the sword here, but
yes.
there's a combination of player and value that makes a pick a great pick. I think you understand where I'm going here. If you could have gotten Daniel Jones at 17, then selecting him where you did is the wrong pick, because you could have gotten the correct value at that. I believe it was the 6th pick.
Yes.
So I'm wrong. Let me state by saying, hey, I was wrong about Daniel Jones. I thought he had a ceiling and that he was basically at his ceiling, and that it wasn't going to work out based on what I had seen at Duke. I was dead wrong. He's played amazing, and I'll be the first to eat that crow. However, the value of where you select, for instance, I know that this is going to sound insane. If you go back to the Tom Brady draft, you don't draft him number 1. Why? Because you can get him with the 199th pick. Right? So, there's a valuation that has to take place in order to select players and build your roster to the best possible way. Now, if it works out, it's going to work out, and good for them. But it could have worked out later in that first round, and if they would have gotten some more help for their roster at 6, that would have been more advantageous. Again, let me preface, I was wrong. Yes. However, when it comes to the valuation, there's still an element of, did you select him in the right spot?
What do you think of Murray's first few games then, Joel?
I think Kyler has been really good. I think that roster is really bad, but there are times when he cuts it loose, when he came back and tied the game against the Lions and so on. He's looked the part, and I think that's what all of us are waiting to see. Is he going to make some mistakes? Yes. Is it a bad roster? Yes. Is he also breaking in a brand new head coach that everyone has maybe more questions than him about? Yes. So is it going to look amazing right away? No. But I think that we've seen enough to say, okay, this can work. His passing acumen, his ability to be quick in space, avoid big hits, all of those things are absolutely still true.
And are you surprised that Haskins hasn't even gotten a sniff to the point where Case Keenum's in a walking boot and Jay Gruden still won't say if Haskins is starter this week?
Yes, and actually I've dug around and tried to get a sense of what's going on there, and I have pretty good intel that the coaching staff was never really on board with the selection, and that was more of a front office selection.
Wow.
And so there is a riff right now of who the front office wants to play and who the coaching staff wants to play. So that's not a good situation right now in Washington. They're not on the same page.
No kidding. So,
yep.
Are you a whistleblower Is there a whistleblower in Washington D.C., Joel,
Listen,
from Virginia?
I know you're triggered by hearing my voice, but let's not trigger everybody with these types
nice
of terms here.
Nice. Really? So that you're hearing that?
Yeah, that's absolutely what I've been hearing from some people close and within the organization, is that, in particular, back, when the selection took place, that there was some folded arms on one side, kind of like, okay, this isn't what we want to do, but we'll do it.
Well, I'm sure those folded arms are not Dan Snyder's. No. Right.
No. So I'm interested to see what it's going to look like over the next few games, because at this point, I mean, what do they have to lose?
Man, so you and Dwayne Haskins are shaking your heads when Daniel Jones gets picked by the Giants, and then Haskins gets picked by Washington, and half the draft room is shaking its heads, is what you're saying.
Yes. From what I understand,
right,
they never thought that Dwayne was going to be available. So the situation was not thoroughly vetted between some of the decision makers and the coaching staff. And so once the Daniel Jones pick happened, it kind of threw everything into motion. And one side started saying, oh, this is great. We thought he wasn't going to be available. Now we can take him. And the other side was saying, well, we didn't want him anyways.
Joel, that's some food for thought, to say the least. And before I let you go, one last thing on Daniel Jones. I asked this of Bruce Feldman, your colleague at Fox Sports College Football, yesterday. In your evaluation of Daniel Jones, you never once heard the nickname Danny Dimes, right? Not even a single time.
No.
Right? Not from
not once. Not once.
Not from the campus, not from his side, not from anybody, not a scout, not a single soul referred to him as Danny Dimes, correct?
Nope. Never heard Danny Dimes. I cannot confirm that report.
Okay. That I don't even I like that nickname less than your evaluation of him first blush, Joel. That's how much I dislike that nickname.
and listen, I dislike my evaluation of him immensely. Oh,
Joel,
goodness.
You're the best, man.
Did I say I was wrong?
You did. You did, man. You owned it. You raised your hand in your hotel room, and we're going to take your word for it that you did. Thanks for send our best to Gus. Tell him that So, do you have any more Michigan games on the schedule right now?
Next week.
Iowa? You've got Michigan, Iowa?
That's right.
Oh my God, get the holistic tea. I need all of that ready. Oh my gosh. Take care of yourself, Joel. Well, I'll be listening to you next week. Thanks for the call.
You got it. Have a good one.
Joel Klatt, at Joel Klatt on Twitter, and at Joel_Klatt on Instagram, right here on The Rich Eisen Show.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live, or download The Rich Eisen Show app.